Alright, let's see here. So we've been talking about this basic algebra stuff, and we're trying to look at some ACT strategies, and we're going to get into factoring, and we're going to probably spend a few days on this. But remember, I'm basically not trying to reteach you this algebra here. I'm really trying to make sure you have strategies or you remember things that you've learned before to help you be able to answer these type of questions in a timely fashion. And you're going to see that we're going to look at these problems in a different way, and maybe see how you can develop strategies to help you make sure you answer these correctly. Okay, and then hopefully soon we're going to look at some ACT practice tests. That way you can get an idea of how these questions might get asked. Anyways, so let's move forward. So some basic algebra, again, anything dealing with variables supposedly is algebraic. So even something as simple as putting a number in place of an x, is considered algebraic. And you can simply solve this one just by plugging it in, doing your order of operations, the parentheses first, then, well, if there was any exponents, but parentheses first, then multiplication, then you could add or subtract. So you can see how I'm working out this answer and something simple like that. Those, I don't think should be a problem. But for some of y'all, maybe it is. I don't know. Simple solving of equations, you should be able to do. The better question is, as they get a little bit more complex, can you still remember to, say, simplify to get it to a point where you can solve it? And again, these are things that we're going to be going over the next few days to make sure that you can be able to do these answers. Okay? And this, again, simple ones like this, I might think it's a little bit easier just to plug in the number. To solve it rather than try to plug in the number. Some of these, even a more complex one, it still might be easier to try to solve it than to, say, try to plug in a number that could take time, depending on how quick you are on a calculator. Here's another example of solving. Oh no, it's got a fraction. Well, there's this thing called change it to a decimal. But you need to know your decimal equivalents, like 4/5 is 0.8, 3/4 is 0.75. You need to know some of those things like quickly, not, well, let me think about it and kind of decide and whatever. Anyways, putting myself to sleep just thinking about how boring some of y'all can be. Alright, so you kind of see how I worked this one out, and you can kind of go from there. Now, if you have questions on any of these, feel free to shoot me a note through Edmodo or to ask me in class. And I can try to go over this, okay? Because maybe you're not the only one. And we really should start trying to use Edmodo for more than just, here's your assignment and here's a video to watch. How about this idea? You can communicate through it too, so why don't we do that? Anyways, alright, so let's talk about factoring. Okay, and according to the ACT, they want you to know all of that. Oh, look, it just popped up magically. Anyways, and keep in mind, this is vice versa type of thing. So, like this side might give to you as a question telling you to get it like this, or go in reverse and have it like this and get it to the factored form like that. So, you need to make sure you kind of know that as the rules. But here's the thing, you don't maybe necessarily need to know it completely. Look, notice here, a number minus another number squared, there's a minus in between. Okay, and you're going to double. Plus, there's a plus in between. Or like plus, minus, something like that. If there's a minus in between, you have a plus and a minus in between those two. Notice characteristics. Understand. Don't just say, oh, this looks so hard to understand. I can't memorize all those letters. That's too much. Munchkins, the idea is to understand the characteristics, not try to memorize in a sense that you supposedly can't handle. But mind you, you're going to remember some stupid little pop song from, like, say, 5 years ago because, well, that was just so much more important. Or what Kim Kardashian was doing, say, last week with Kanye or whatever. I don't know, and I really don't care. I should need to stop talking, right? Anyways, so let's look at some of these things. So we're going to factor here, and I want you to factor this. Now, notice there's a minus in between, and this has a similarity to what we saw before. There was an x squared and a y squared, so that means I'm going to put that plus. Okay. Woo, went too fast. Okay. So here, and notice x squared, the square's on the outside, so I can put x and y there in the middle, or inside the parentheses. Now, this was supposed to be a 2, but it wasn't. Well, divide the 4 by 2. So take that middle number, divide it by 2, and that gives you a number that should be in front of the x or the y. Well, because then there's a number in front of the y, I'm going to put that in front of the y. And what's 2 squared? Oh my goodness, it's 4. See, very easy. All right, another example. 25 minus x squared. Huh? How do I do that, sir? Well, here's a thought. Notice that this one only has 2 terms and there's a minus in between. Okay, and also notice that the 25 is a square. 5 squared is 25. You should know your squares. Okay, so I could easily go, okay, well then I'm going to put parentheses, parentheses, plus and a minus, put the 5. Notice the 5 was in the front. Ah, I went too fast. And then you put the x. So a very simple problem that you should be able to do. Okay, but again, you're going to see over the next few days, we're going to be doing strategies on this. So, you know, this is something that, you know, we spend days and weeks on, and now we're going to spend minutes. So kind of keep that in mind. So here's another example. Oh, and this is from the notes. This one talks about how do you factor this? Well, this doesn't look like something that we've seen. First off, there's only 2 things, a 24x squared y cubed, and then there's an 8x cubed y squared, and there's a plus in between. The other one had minus. Okay, so here you try to factor out the greatest common factor. So when they do that, that means there's going to be 1 parentheses and then some number on the outside. Well, how do I get that number? Well, first thing to do is look at the 24 and 8. Okay, and what's the largest number that can divide it into both 24 and 8? Well, that would be 8, and that would give me a 3 and a 1. Notice I put the plus in between because it was a plus in between. Okay, then how do I work the next parts? Well, there's all sorts of strategies, but here's what I used to do to make it simple, and I don't think this is something that would be hard to do on an ACT test. I would normally go like this. Okay, in the first term, there's 2 x's. In the second term, there's 3 x's. Well, so how many do they have in common? Okay, they had 2 x's in common. Both of them had at least 2. So that means on the outside of the parentheses, because what you put on the outside is what they had in common, I put an x squared. And I had an x left over, and it was on the second one. So I'm going to put that in the parentheses. Then I did the y's. Okay, again, I had 2 groups of y's. That goes on the outside. And then I had a y left over in the first term. Boom. And there you go. Now it's factored. So something like that might be a strategy. How would we apply this strategy differently when we're doing multiple choice? Sorry. That's something we'll look at as we get through this one, okay? So maybe y'all can come up with stuff that might help you when you're looking at just a multiple choice. All right. They did want to talk about multiplying and talk about FOIL, but I don't believe in talking about in FOIL. So here's what I would do. I want you to take this problem and multiply it. Actually, let's see if we've got several problems here. Let's multiply all these problems. Okay? Take a minute, see if you can multiply them, and see what you remember how to multiply them. I'll give you the answers, and then if you do want to know, I will show you how I would do them. There's different methods that I would call. One I used to call my old school method, which is like vertical multiplication, which is like multiplication like the way you learn 2-digit multiplication back in elementary school. Another one is called the box method. Makes it look like Punnett squares from biology. I really hate the idea of calling it FOIL, first, outer, inner, last, because that doesn't really, that only works for binomials. And the idea here is that you're talking about every term in one parentheses multiplies every term in the other parentheses, and then you combine like terms. So it's really more of a mnemonic device to help you how to remember your order that you would do things in. So that's why I'm not a big fan of that. Anyways, y'all should have hopefully been working on this. Go ahead and pause me if you need to. But here are the answers. Dun dun dun. Oh, that's taking too long to write. Okay, so here are the answers. There you go. So these are the answers that I got for that problem, or those problems. Now, what does that have to do? Well, let's say I needed these and I need to go back to the factored forms. That means we're going back to factoring. Going back to factoring. Can you get this to look like those parentheses? Well, let's see here. A plus and a plus. Now keep in mind the first term in a parentheses multiplied to give you that first term here. This and this combine to get you that middle one, but they multiply to get you the last one. So you add or subtract to get the middle, but you multiply to get the last. So what I would do, if I was using my answer choices, is I would go, okay, well, look, I want an x in both parentheses, and I want a number that multiplies to give me 24, but would add, that's your clue there, add to get me a 10. So I would look at my parentheses and my answer choices to hopefully quickly figure out that it should be x plus 4, x plus 6, or x plus 6, x plus 4. Now here I see subtract. So now I'm looking at two numbers that multiply. Oh, actually, but I'm sorry, I've got a plus here. So, we should do it this way. I said this wrong. If you see a plus here, you know you added. If you see a minus there, you know you subtracted this middle number. Okay, so I really want, say, two numbers that added up to 8 but multiplied to give me a 12. But there will be a minus in between. Okay, and that was 2 and 6. Again, these are all things, strategies that you should hopefully remember. And if not, we can go a little bit more in depth, and we actually probably will. But right now you're going to do a general ACT assignment that will kind of do that. And then I'll do some more worksheets that could hopefully strengthen that up a bit. All right, my last example. Wait a sec. This one, though, has a number in front of the x squared. Okay, now here's where you want to look. Okay, think. You know you're going to have x in both parentheses. Okay, you see a 2, you know you want to see a 2 in one parentheses. Now, here I have a minus at the end, so that means I'm going to subtract, but I still need numbers that multiply to give me 15, and the quickest numbers I can think of are 5 and 3. Now, notice here, though, if I put 5 here and in this other parentheses and 2 on the other side, 5 times 2 is 10. 3 times 1 is 3. And because there's a minus at the end, you're going to subtract those two. Well, 10 minus 3 is 7. So I know I've got the right order and I've got the right numbers. Then the question is, how do I get the plus? Well, the plus should be with the 5, because 5 times 2 is going to give me a 10. I need a positive 10. And the minus should be with 3, so I would have to subtract 3 and thus get 7. And there you go. Again, we'll discuss this more in depth if we need to, or as much as we can, and we'll look at this more later. Okay, so you're going to have an assignment on this, and again, this was a little bit longer than usual, but there's a lot more I could cover on this topic actually. So anyways, hopefully you've watched this video, you'll have some notes, and you'll be prepared for tomorrow, or the lesson that goes with this. Thank you very much for your time. Take care.